Hi, this is Edward Troxel. Today we're going to have a little fun with our tutorial, and we're going to look at what I like to call the newspaper spin. If you remember back to the old shows in the 1960s, they might start with a newspaper image that was way far in the background and spun several times as it came forward to be in view. So let's take a look at what it's going to take an image and make it start kind of far back and then spin as it comes forward. So let's look and see what it takes to do a newspaper spin in Vegas. First, I'm going to go ahead and start with the code already in place so that we can just go through it line by line, and we will look at each line and figure out what it does. First line here, we're going to set up a variable called the beginning size, and this is going to be a percentage of the original size. So in this case, let's start it at 15% original size, and then the ending size we're going to set at 75%. Then we want to say how many times is the newspaper going to spin. In this case, we want it to spin 5 times. And then this is going to be the percentage that we leave playing after the spin is complete. So 60% of the time of the image is going to be spinning. 40% of the time is going to be stopped after it gets done spinning. Our next task is to go through each one of the tracks in Vegas, and let's check to see if it's a video track, since obviously this won't work on audio. So there's no need to even look at the audio tracks. Then we're going to go through all of the events on that track, and if the event is selected, then that is the event we're going to process. Naturally, it will do all selected events at once, so if you had, say, 10 events selected on the timeline, it would do all 10 of them. After we know that the event is selected, we're going to turn it into a video event using this line. An event on the timeline can be either video or audio, and so we want to look at specifically video stuff in this one. So now we're going to take this generic event and turn it into a video event. Then we're going to look at the keyframes that are available on that video event. This next line here might look a little confusing, but I used NKF as the variable name. That stands for new keyframe, and this is going to be a time code as to where that new keyframe is going to be. So we take the length of that event, and then we subtract the length times the percentage that we are not going to spin. So in this case, this will be 40% of the time. So let's take the total length minus 40%. And then we are going to create a new keyframe at that location. So key number 2 is going to be the keyframe at that new location, and then we add key number 2 as the second keyframe. So now we have our 2 keyframes. Our first keyframe, which we call this keyframe, and this one is keyframe number 0. We have 2 keyframes, so we have keyframe number 0, keyframe number 1. So the beginning keyframe is going to be keyframe number 0, and we're going to set that to this keyframe. Then we are going to call a routine that says scale the keyframe. We pass it the keyframe we're wanting to scale. We pass it the beginning size, and we pass it the number of spins we want it to do. Then we're going to do the same thing with keyframe number 1. Keyframe number 1 now becomes this keyframe, and we do the same thing, call scale keyframe, passing it this keyframe, the ending size, and then we want 0 rotations at the end. So it will start 360 degrees times the number of spins, and then it will end up at 0. But we need this scale keyframe routine. That is not a command that you can call. That is another routine that I have written. So let's look at the scale keyframe routine. This is the scale keyframe routine. It's going to return nothing, so we have void here. It is going to receive a video motion keyframe, which I have called keyframe, and it's going to receive a float value, that's the size change, and a float value for the rotation angle. Okay, so we get our size change, which should be somewhere between 0 and 100. In our case, the first number we're sending it to it is 15. So we would get 15 divided by 100, which would give us our 15%. And so we divide 1 by the 15% to get our change of the width. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on our change of height. That way they're both changed by the same amount. If for some reason we had passed a very large number above 100% to the routine, then it's going to use this instead. Instead of dividing 1 divided by, it's just going to take the percentage value and divide by 100. We need to get our bounds here, which is going to be a video motion vertex. So we get our new video motion vertex and we pass it our change in width and our change in height. So the vertex is looking for an x and a y, so we are change in width and our change in height. And then we call the scale by routine, which is a routine in the API. And so it will scale it by the numbers found in that routine. So it'll just change it to 15% of the original size. And then finally we do this last line here, which is going to be a rotate by, and we actually have to do a little math here. We're going to take the rotation angle, which is the number of spins times 360, so this time it's 5 times 360, and then we're going to multiply that by the value of pi divided by 180, and that will give us the actual rotation angle that we need to get the correct value for that number of spins. So let's give this a shot. I have a couple of images here we can try this on. If we open this one up in pan crop, you will see that it is set to the full width of the image, but the image is taller than the screen, so therefore what we see on the screen is part of that image. Let's run the script on this one and see what happens. So we go to Tools, Scripting, Run Script, and I can just run the class1.cs file without having to compile it because everything's self-contained there. And you will notice that we are now looking at it here at an angle, and if we play back, we will see it spinning until it gets back to 75% of the original size, and we can tell it's 75% because we still have a black bar on the left and the right. So if we want to look at this a little more smoothly, I can go through each of the various frames step by step, and we can see that it is spinning the entire time until we get 60% of the way into the image, at which time it stops spinning. Now let's look at the image beside it. Alright, so let's go to the very beginning. Make sure we're at the beginning of this image, and let's reset it to be the full height of the image so that it starts smaller on the screen. And we'll select this, run the script, and now you can see it started very small, and as it zooms in, spinning, 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 and it ends at 75% of the original size. You can see the black bars on the edges are wider, and we now have a black bar on top and bottom as well. So when you're using this, you might want to check your pan crop settings before doing this, and in fact the script could actually go in and change it so that it was full height on the image as well. As you can see, doing the newspaper spin was really a fairly simple process, even though it required using a couple of keyframes. So now that we know how to use keyframes, we can use the same techniques in the future when other things need keyframes. Please sign up at www.JETDV.com and subscribe on YouTube to get further notifications on when new videos are presented.